Welcome back, everybody, to the Canberra Football Show, episode 20. We are now live via Zoom. Well, not live, but, live between ourselves via Zoom. And I've got Russ and Michael with me today. Like I said, episode 20, we're back into it. This is the first episode of the new season, so I'm very glad to be back. Russ, thank you very much for joining me today. How have you been lately? Obviously, United shirt on as always.
Yeah, well, only because they got the win this morning. Otherwise, I would have been not wearing it. No, very good. Thanks, Matt. Great to be back here again. I can't believe it's been 20 episodes now. It seems to be only like yesterday we were sat here doing episode 1. So great to be back again for a new season.
It is indeed. Thank you, Russ. And Michael, thanks for joining us today. How have you been, mate?
Thanks, Matt. I was just as Russ said that 20 episodes, I was going to draw to that straight away. I can't believe it's been 20 episodes. It's crazy to think, we were doing episode 1, all of us together at Matt's cafe there. And now we've sort of, got this innovation going where we're doing it over Zoom, and a lot has transpired over the last 12 months with the shortened season last year, the COVID outbreak, and now all the teams preparing for a full season again, so they'll be looking to get back into it, itching, raring to go. And I think that goes for obviously not just the NPL but just Canberra football in general. Everyone's raring to go, to get a full season back. So no, it's great. I'm very happy to be a part of it again, and looking forward to a great year. So
let's go. As Italian journalist Fabrizio Romano says, do you follow him on Twitter?
I do.
He's a very, very good transfer journalist. So Russ, before we get started, is there anything you wanted to say about Bar TV Sports or anything like that?
Just you can follow all the action again live on Bar TV Sports this year. You may have seen the FFA Cup qualifying rounds kicked off on the weekend, Gungahlin and Juventus. We've got 7 great sponsors on board with us this year to help bring the broadcasting round to the first round 3, 4 and the quarterfinals live to you, and that includes Better Collective, where we are here, Exhibit Printers, Crowther's Property, Monaro Built Homes. I'm going to forget one now. I know Canberra Deakin Football Club, Canberra Olympic Football Club, and who have I forgotten? Brain. It doesn't work. Anyway, there's 7 of them. I wasn't prepared for that, but it's great that they're on board, and we're really looking forward to having them this season. It's a good initiative. They're all football people, and they've come on board to help us out.
Awesome. You ready to go, Michael? Let's get started, shall we? We'll start, as always, alphabetical order. So we'll start with Belconnen United. New coach, Fabian Michelli. 2020 season, they finished in 3rd place. And then the 2020 Championship Series, they finished 4th. Russ, what are the ins and outs at Belconnen?
They picked up a couple. They picked up Michael Piccolo from Canberra Olympic, and Christian Kreskis has come in from Canberra, Croatia. Interestingly, Michael Mensah has come back from a sabbatical. He's going to add a lot of experience to their attacking threat. He scored a couple of goals in pre-season, actually, against West Canberra Wanderers. They've not lost a lot either. Kofi Danning's gone to Monaro Panthers. Jake Garner and John O'Lear have moved interstate, and Ethan Stamatis has gone to Gungahlin United. So arguably, after what we thought might be a summer of turmoil, where there was a lot of rumours around town that they would lose a lot of players, they've probably got the most stable squad out of everybody in the Premier League this year, and I'm really looking forward to watching them play.
I'm definitely looking forward to the new season. Now, like I said, new coach Russ, Fabian Michelli. He was the under-23s coach last season, and this is his first season coaching in 1st grade. So it's going to be interesting to see how he goes. However, we all know Belconnen. Most of the coaches, go through their system, and he's been there for a couple of years now. After he came over from Canberra, Croatia, a couple of years back. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go. And of course, they won 4-1 in that final against Monaro, very dominant in that final. So I guess the 23s play should have a nice progression there, as they say. And like you said, they're able to retain the majority of their squad, which I think is also key. But of course, no Paul McCall. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go under new coach Fabian Michelli. Now, I think what is key for Belconnen here is that a lot of people haven't been talking about them. So they probably are able to fly under the radar, sort of do what they need to do, and just fly under the radar. I think that's really going to be key for them. I think they're all happy with that. Everyone's happy that people are sort of probably counting them out, not saying it, but just talking about other teams instead of them. So I think that'll help. And of course, let's not forget Flores, how great he was last season. I think that's very key that they were able to keep him, and also for his own progression. I think that's very key to say the least. Russ, what are your thoughts on Belconnen United?
Really good blend, mix of youth and experience. If you think what they've got at the back, they've got Jordan Thurtell in the sticks, and then in front of him they've got a back four, which is probably going to include Zach Mabry, Darren Bailey, Phil Bourgeot, Isaac Clements. Then you bring in people like Taylor Beaton and Dustin Wells, and then you put that sprinkling of youngsters around that you talked about. Luca Flores, who had a great season last year. They've got another young striker coming through by the name of Max Green, who I saw in pre-season, only briefly because he got injured, but he looks a bright prospect. And Max Melik as well, who he injured his knee in the pre-season friendly I saw against Coniston, I think it might have been, but hopefully he's back and going again. And their mix is great. Michael Tarazi, I'm looking forward to see it. Hopefully he can stay injury free this season as well. And if they do, they've got a good chance as anybody. You need that experience in Canberra Premier League, especially in a 21-round season where squads are going to be very important. And we're going to talk about that, I guess, a lot during this preview about the depth in the squads. And with the 23s that they're bringing through, they're going to be a very good outfit.
I think that, when we're on the topic of, Belconnen United here, obviously I think Matt hit the nail on the head when you're talking about a club that has definitely not had too much, hype or conversation, around them in terms of, building up to a season and the additions that they've made to their squad. As you said, they've been able to maintain the majority of the players that were there last year that, were able to finish in the top four. And I guess maybe no one's expecting them to go on and win the title for this upcoming season. But, I think a realistic expectation would be to obviously be in that top four again. And I definitely think with experienced players that they've got and the youngsters as well that we saw last season, like Lucas Flores that you mentioned previously. He had a fantastic season last year, which, really catapulted Belconnen in the final third. So, I mean, and obviously the coaching change as well. You've got a coach who's coming in having success at the under 23 level, but how's he going to go coaching first grade? So there'll be a lot of, as for all the teams, there's going to be a lot of narratives and stories that will build up throughout the season. So we'll see how Belconnen United do.
I also like the signing of Michael Piccolo as well, because he can play a various amount of positions. Last year we saw him at Olympic play mostly as a central midfielder, but he can play. If you need him up front, he can play on the wings. He can play as a second striker. He can play in midfield. He's got a lot of various positions that he can play. So I do like that signing from Fabian. I think he said that was the first person he thought of when he wanted to sign a player up.
Yeah, it brings good energy to the team as well, which they're not struggling with, to be honest, in that middle park, but their creativity as well might take a little bit of pressure off Dustin Wells as well. And as we said, a 21-round competition, they're going to need that depth. And
no Kofi Danning as well, Russ. And I know you and Frank especially that was one of your favorite partnerships up front last season. So no, he's moved on to Monaro. So what do you think about their new partnership needed for Lucas Flores? Yeah,
well, I think that's where Michael Tarazi, they're hoping he's going to be fit and he can come firing. And I think he's got goals in him. We know that. He's got a lot of ability. I'm really interested to see how Michael Mensah pulls up as well. He's getting on a little bit in age, as we know now. Although I can't really say that myself because I am too. But, it's good to see him back in there. And they might have him in there for the coach, the experience that Kofi brought as well. He brings that kind of thing too. And as I mentioned, keep an eye out for Max Green as well. I think he might surprise a few people.
All right, Michael, on to Canberra, Croatia.
Yep, Canberra, Croatia. They've still got Dean Ugrinic at the helm there. Obviously, last season in 2020, they finished first place. They won the championship last season pretty convincingly. They were fantastic last year, beating Gungahlin 3-1 in the grand final. Russ, what are some of the key ins and outs concerning Canberra, Croatia for this season?
Well, much like Belconnen, they're not going to do too much. They haven't done much either. They're keeping the majority of the squad they've got. And why wouldn't you? Why would you change a team that went unbeaten throughout the entire year? They brought in a couple of players. Luke Pilkington's come in for Nico Oider in the middle of the park. Do you need to get that, Matt?
Let it ring. If it goes the second time.
It might be Dean ringing up now to tell us he's
you could see Matt with the hand on the head.
Luke Pilkington is a really big in for them. And Matthew Waters back from injury. He was their player of the year before last, and they didn't miss him last year, but he adds that extra dimension as a wide left attacking player. They've lost a couple of players. Dom Gianpaolo's gone to Monaro Panthers, and of course, Ed Brunskill and Ivan Pavlak have retired. But again, look at the squad they've got. They've got a massive amount of depth at the back. They've got great midfielders. They've got forwards that can score goals, and they've got a really good goalkeeper. It's a 21-round comp. They're not going to go undefeated. I don't think they are anyway. I'll be very surprised if they went through 21 rounds of this competition, given the vagaries of injuries and what have you, undefeated. But they're going to be the team to beat again for me.
Yeah, they absolutely will. Matt?
Yeah.
Do you want to go?
I'm getting mad and I'm turning it off now. Jesus. Now I've got to keep that in mind.
I want a pizza. I don't.
Yeah, someone's calling up for a large pepperoni pizza for the family.
Absolutely. And
I'm keeping that on here just so I can say it off.
Best authentic pizzas in town.
If they call again.
Oh, there we go.
Hey, sorry, just let you know we're not open Monday nights. I'm just here for a non-work thing. Sorry about that. Bye. When you call a third times, you know you really want a pepperoni pizza, right?
Well, that's the vagaries of live broadcasting, isn't it?
This is actually pretty fun. I might keep it in.
Definitely do so.
All right. So, yeah, Canberra, Croatia. Michael, is there anything else you wanted to add before I talk about Canberra, Croatia?
Absolutely. So, obviously, we've touched on it already. They're the reigning champs. I think the expectation is they're going to do it again. Obviously, like Russ said, they were undefeated last season, but given there was a very shortage amount of games, and we're talking about a 21-game long season now. So obviously the chances of that happening are going to be, shortened. Their greatest strength last year was winning games in the last 5 minutes. We saw them do it on numerous occasions. Russ, I believe you referred it to as Dino time. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it was a Dino time at some stage. It was the old play on the Fergie time, wasn't it? They just managed to, they just got goals in them when they needed them. And in pre-season, this season's been much the same. They've only played 2 pre-season matches, but they've scored 8 in both games. 3 players have got hat-tricks already. So they've all got their iron. Nikos Kalfas has got 5 goals in 2 games. Daniel Balac got a hat-trick in the first game against Weston. Jason Ugrinich got a hat-trick, and he's got 4 in 2 games now. So, yeah, and they've got a young boy from their 18s coming called Mate Busek, or Busek, I think it's pronounced. And they've got high hopes for him as well. They think he's going to be an absolute revelation. So hopefully he'll get to show his wares this year as well. But they've got just an outstanding squad from front to back all the way through.
And lastly, I just want to mention, I think a big loss for them will be Nico Oida, who had a great season for Canberra, Croatia last year. Not even just for Canberra, Croatia. I mean, he was probably one of the best players in the league. And I'm sure you can attest to that, Russ. He was fantastic last year. And I'm sure you obviously covered him a lot, or the Canberra, Croatia team when they won the title last year. Just how big of a loss will he be? Even though Canberra, Croatia, you still look at their squad from top to bottom, they're still going to be the favourites. But just how big of a loss will this prove to be in the context of how they prepare for this season and go on to look to retain the title?
Normally, you'd say absolutely massive, because your player of that ilk that can create, can score goals, is just that dominant midfield presence. You'd think, well, how do you replace that? But they brought in Luke Pilkington, and he's not the same player, but he is a quality footballer. And it's almost as if they've gone, well, we've lost one local class midfielder that's the standard of this game is you would say world class in our standards, and replace him with another one. And I think Luke Pilkington's got experience of Canberra as well. He's come out of a very strong Victorian Premier League competition, and I'm really excited to see him pull on a red shirt and see how he goes in amongst that group of players, because I think he's going to shine.
Yeah, and when I talked to Matt Gerbischer, the captain of Canberra, Croatia, earlier on, that should be up next week or something like that, my interview with him, he was talking. He mentioned Luke Pilkington, and he talked about how happy he is to have him in the squad as well. And he wished Nico luck, of course, in Sydney. The thing for Canberra, Croatia with me. Like, I agree. I think they're going to be probably one of the hardest teams to beat this season, especially over the whole season. I feel like with the amount of depth they have, and not just that, they've retained the majority of their squad. Like, I'm sure that we've mentioned here again, and I think that's really key because, especially if you've just won the comp, the last thing you want is like sort of a shakeup, and with the same coach, mostly the same players, and especially the core bits of the group there. I think that's what's going to be key for them. And also, I guess the lead up for Canberra, Croatia. It's obviously it's going to be very hard to keep it undefeated over the whole season, like you said, Russ. But I guess just the whole build up for this season, I think, will be more key for Canberra, Croatia than everyone else, because as we all know, Canberra, Croatia, like some of the biggest clubs in Canberra, they've got an expectation to, at the very least, make finals.
They've had a very truncated build-up. Their initial pre-season schedule had a lot of interstate trips involved, and for one reason or another, they fell by the wayside. And they've, as I said, they've only played Western Molonglo and South Coast United at the moment. They do have a match against ANU, AIS Grass, next midweek, 3 days before they play the Charity Shield against Wagga City Wanderers. So heading into that round one clash, which we'll talk about later, against a Tigers FC side that have significantly bolstered. Yeah, maybe they'll be a little underdone. I'm not sure, but it's a 21 round comp, and you're not going to win it in round one. And they've got enough quality to get past that.
100%.
Certainly do.
On Canberra, Croatia, Michael?
Sorry?
Anything else on Canberra, Croatia?
Oh, I think we've pretty much hit the nail on the head with Canberra, Croatia. I mean, they're going to be a very good side to watch under Dino Grinic. Like we've already stated, I mean, they're going to be a front runner for the title. I expect them to be consistent all season long. They might have a few hiccups here and there, but nothing that will derail them too much. That's for certain. Matt, do you want to move on to our next club?
And the next club is Canberra Olympic. Coach Robbie Catnack will be in his second season at the club. Last year, they finished 6th place, which is quite unusual for them. Obviously, a shortened season. And in the 5th place playoff, they finished 3rd, where a lot of their senior players actually didn't end up playing. They played a lot of their youth players in that setup. Russ, so what are the ins and outs at Canberra Olympic?
Yeah, Robbie's lost a lot of players that played in that squad last year. It's a real changing of the guard at Canberra Olympic at the moment, and they're bringing through a lot of young, promising talent into that squad. Their major ins, Alex Connell, goalkeeper from Melbourne, used to play in Canberra for Belconnen United quite a while back, so he's a big pickup for them. And Oliver Wiedeke, back from retirement, pacey winger. He's a fitness instructor as well, so he's super fit and sharp, and that's their major ins. Outs, they've lost, like I said, a fair majority of their players from last year. People like Stephen Dominici, Lasse Ulrich, Daniel Sparrow, Nick Popovic, you could go on, the list was massive. But for Robbie Catnack, he's not overly concerned. I've spoken to him a few times in pre-season. I've seen them play a couple of times. They're going to rely an awful lot, I think, on the goals of Isese Hegi. He's got 5 in pre-season. He can be frustratingly inconsistent, as we've seen throughout his career. Sometimes he's unplayable, and other times he can't hit a barn door. But he's been in good form in pre-season. I think it's important for Canberra Olympic that he does hit the ground running and score some goals. And I think this could be a breakout year for him in that respect, because there's going to be a lot of pressure on his shoulders. And some players stand up to that, and I think he could be one of them. A lot of young boys as well to keep an eye in that team. And the leadership of Daniel Linstead at the back might be critical.
100%. I think that will be critical. And you said how it feels like a change of the guard. Even though last year was his first year in charge, I think I said when I talked to you, I said this feels like the new era, like it starts now, sort of, because they've half the players or some of the players have moved on that were well known for the 2017 run.
Yeah, absolutely. And nothing lasts forever. And it's a tough gig for whoever was going to follow Frank Keisha into that role as well, because of the success he had with that Canberra Olympic team. And we've had him in this room and we've talked about him a lot. And I was lucky enough to write a book on that campaign you're talking about. And the fact that they did the treble and got to the FFA Cup semi-finals, it was an incredible season. And there's always a case of a little bit of after the Lord Mayor show when that's happened, and it's difficult for anybody to come in, and for the players in that matter, to lift themselves to that level again. So basically, I think they've gone about it the right way. They've gone, well, we don't need to try and carry on. We'll just start again, rebuild, bring a lot of youngsters through. There's a lot of talented youngsters. We saw them at the end of last season. There was a fair few floating around that got ability. Just need to give them their head and let them play. It might be a struggle for them against some of the other sides that we look at that we think, in inverted commas, are stacked. But you never know. It's 21 rounds, and if they can get off to a good start and put some patches of runs together, which is important, get some points against the big teams, if you like, then they'll go okay.
And he also has told me that he's not only bringing up a lot of players from the 23s, he's also been looking at a lot of players for training for the 18s, which I found interesting as well. So and we all know Olympic have had a pretty good youth setup. I mean, they've been in the finals or in that Final Four for more than a couple of years now.
I've seen a couple of their preseason friendlies against Queanbeyan City, and I saw them play Tuggeranong United as well. And they had a lot of those youngsters in that squad, and the under-18s boys specifically, and there was some really impressive talent there. They lost both those games by the odd goal, but it's pre-season, it doesn't really matter. I think it's a question of finding those guys, those under-18s, under-23s, getting them into that NPL first grade squad, and then finding their feet and saying, well, actually, this isn't much different to what I played before. I can do this, I can bring my ability to this. And when you're playing against players that perhaps you don't know very well, it can be quite hard. So for the other teams, it might be a surprise to play against his Canberra Olympic side and come up against some fresh talents.
Yeah, I, just to touch on Canberra Olympic, and you guys made some excellent points. I think when I've been looking at Canberra Olympic and gathered all the information about sort of how their squad's set up for this upcoming season, and just the changes that they've obviously endured over the last couple of years. Obviously, Frank Kosher taking a year off last year, him obviously going to Monaro, Robbie Catnach taking over the helm from him last season. It seems a bit as though that they're going through a transitional period that we'll get to really see at the forefront this season. I mean, we're talking about, Matt touched on it there, how, Robbie's really taken aim on looking at, under 23s, under 18s players to bring into the squad. And I think, it could be looked at as a potential little bit of a rebuild that could, we could really see the benefits of the players that he's going to bring up this season and them shine in, 2-3 years time. It could be a process that might take, a bit of time, but there looks to be like a bit of a vision in place where they just want to, rely on their youth a little bit this season. Show them off to the Canberra, football fan base. So I think they'll be young and obviously exciting. So it'll be interesting to see where Canberra Olympic not so much end up this season, but just how they go about nurturing their youngsters and how they fit into first grade football.
Yeah, I think the goals, as I mentioned, the goals of Ehegi are going to be crucial to them. I think, and I think he can do it. I think he can score the goals that can keep them up, I guess you'd say, in this season. But I spoke to Robbie. He's not that concerned. He doesn't think that they're going to be in that mix at the bottom of the end of the season. But we'll wait and see. And we wish him all the best. Yeah,
and in the interview I just posted today with him, he said that top four is still the aim. It's Olympic and it doesn't change. So,
and why should it? I mean, I think the group he's got, like I say, you bring young players in, they're young, enthusiastic, and they bring something different.
And before we move on to Gungahlin, when you say, like, once you stop aiming for a club like them, once you stop aiming for the top four, then that's when it sort of all falls apart.
I don't think you ever stop aiming for the top four. I don't think any club in that competition is going to start the year going, well, we're fighting against relegation, or we're going to be mid-table, or whatever it might be. They're all going to go, well, we can make the top four here. They would have seen what they've got last year. They would have had that truncated season last year was almost like a gimme long pre-season, if you like. They've been able to shuffle their sides around, have a look at players. We've spoke about it last year. The coaches have looked at their players and gone, well, I use this as an opportunity to blood these young players, see if they've got it at this level. And this is the season that matters.
Indeed it is. Michael, next club, Gungahlin United.
Gungahlin United, yes, indeed. So Marcel Munoz, obviously Gungahlin finished second in the 2020 season last year. They also, like we mentioned previously, they lost to Canberra, Croatia in the grand final 3-1. Russ, quite a bit of change at Gungahlin United, it seems, for this upcoming season.
Yeah, I mean, we were sat here this time last year talking about all the players that they brought in from other clubs, and it was a list as long as your arm, and it was a who's who of Canberra football. For one reason or another, as we've said before, things have changed. They've got a very young team again. I watched them on the weekend play Queanbeyan City. They drew 1-1. It was a bit of a cabbage patch though out there at Gungahlin.
It always is.
It's not looking too good there at the moment. But they brought in some good talent. They brought in Nick Dahl from Monaro Panthers. He's played in a grand final. He knows what that's about. Really excited to see Roy Anderson kick on as well. He was good at West Canberra Wanderers last year, and I think in Gungahlin United he might thrive a bit more. Robbie Kachenko's gone over there as well. From Monaro, he was very good at the Panthers too. So they're a bit much like Olympic. It's a little bit of a changing of the guard there as well. Marcel's got these young boys coming through. He's still got some experienced talent there. Felipe Bernardo Madrid, of course, will lead the line. Michael John's still there. So they've still got a lot of talent in that squad. They have lost a lot. They've lost a lot of their first grade players from last year, gone across the Tigers and Monaro and certain other places. But I don't think they'll be too concerned. I think he'll look at that squad and go, well, a lot of the boys I've got are here for the right reasons. They're strong players. They're first grade players. And he's brought up these group of young boys from the 23s into his first grade squad as well to give them an opportunity. And they've had a reasonable pre-season. They've won a couple, lost a couple, scored some goals here, there. And I think they're going to do all right.
I think they most definitely will. I mean, 2 grand finals appearances in back-to-back seasons. So they're obviously eyeing a third appearance, hoping to change the result this season for sure. A lot was obviously one of the biggest themes in preseason that we discussed last year was, how all those players, all those personalities that had come into Gungahlin United, the who's who of Canberra football, as you mentioned, Russ, how was Marcel going to handle such a big squad with a lot of talent, where that's obviously changed this season. It's kind of done the opposite effect. He's had a lot of people or a lot of players, leave and, seek other opportunities at other clubs. But, like you mentioned, they've had a couple of really good players come in, like Nick Dahl, like you mentioned. They've obviously got their mainstays in Nick Rathjen, Felipe Bernardo Madrid, and Captain Jack Green. That's absolutely integral to that team. And, time will tell how well they'll do this season. 21 games. Matt, what are your thoughts on Gungahlin United for this upcoming season? Obviously, the biggest. I've gone over one of the biggest highlights that they'll have. For this season, we'll see if they can make that third straight grand final appearance. But I guess what are your thoughts and feelings on the changes and what you expect from Gungahlin?
I'm intrigued to see Gungahlin, and we mentioned this plenty of times last year on the podcast. I thought you hit the nail on the head right there, Michael, when you were talking about how it was always a big squad and it was always going to be difficult to keep that. And in just before the final, when I talked to him, even Marcel was saying there, he was still saying how he stressed how, the whole squad, it was supposed to be for 21 rounds and he would have liked to see more games played, even if it was just, another round or a couple more games. So I understand the frustration, especially when they, the amount of work it would have taken to, get a squad like that together last year. And Monaro and Tigers are two teams where you can definitely say they know what that's like to garner such big squads. It's always going to be a little disappointing when you can't play the whole team, especially in that small amount of time. But when I talked to their assistant coach Chris Cadge, was very happy with all the youngsters coming in, and he also highlighted how happy they were to get some of the club's juniors back. So I think it was Tachenko, Stamatis, and there was another player as well. I don't remember who it was, but he mentioned how it was I thought that was key when he said that. That sort of stood out to me, because that sort of touches upon their philosophy. When I chatted to Chris, it's still all about the philosophy. When I said, what are your aims? He said, our aims are to keep playing the football they want to play. It's always the philosophy first for them at Gungahlin. So I thought that was very telling that he talked about the juniors first, and especially the ones that used to be their juniors and they've returned to the club, and also the philosophy.
Well, I mean, Marcel Monaro is one of the best coaches that we have in Canberra, and he can put a side out in the park. I don't think it matters too much with him who's in there, because they'll play the system that he wants to play and they'll make it work. Michael mentioned two names in there that are going to be pivotal to their season. Jack Green, as you mentioned, at the back is always pivotal to everything they do. But Nick Rathjen, who goes under the radar with them a little bit, I think he was one of their best players when they won the grand final a couple of years ago. They missed him through injury a little bit last year. Having him fit and firing in the middle of the park and just doing what he does, which is just patrol that area in front of the back four and just pick the passes out. If they can do that, they'll go okay. And again, they'll rely on the goals of Felipe Bernardo Madrid. And I think Roy Anderson's going to weigh in with a few as well. It's quite an experienced side with a sprinkling of mix of youth in there as well. I saw Moses Garang score a lovely goal on the weekend against Queanbeyan City. So he's come through as well. And it's going to be interesting to see how they progress.
Absolutely. Matt, you want to move on?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything Russ said there. And like you said, Bernardo Madrid especially, I think, will be key with some of those goals, especially he scored in the final when it looked like Canberra Croatia were dominating the majority of that match. He comes in and he scores. I saw Gungahlin play against O'Connor, and he was, even though it was 1-1 and they probably didn't play to their full potential, but some of those breaks Bernardo would make down the flank is just absolutely insane. So I do think he'll be key with them. And of course, Jack Green and Rathjen, like you said, Jack Green always knows how to keep a defense organized, whether it's a back three or a back four, which they do like to change throughout the season.
That'll be interesting to see whether they do change that this year. Their back three last year got called out a couple of times, especially in that final series, whether Marcel will stick to that philosophy or whether he would go to a flat back four and change the system somewhat remains to be seen. So if they can bring that into their game and have that versatility to play with a 3 or a 4, it makes them a very difficult prospect.
Yeah, and that O'Connor match, I do believe they were playing with the back three the majority of the match that I saw. Michael, is there any more on Gungahlin, or do we move on to Tigers?
You mean Monaro?
Oh, yeah, sorry, Monaro.
You've written them off already.
Yeah. No, but no, I think like we've mentioned, I think Gungahlin are still going to be a top 4. Obviously, they remain staying that in that top 4. Given the even though they've lost a lot of personnel, I think like we've mentioned, they've got a blend of youth and experienced players that will sort of steer the ship over the course of the season. So I think we all should expect Gungahlin to still be, up towards the higher end of at the end of the table come the end of the season. So a lot will depend on injuries. You mentioned Nick Rathjen and how he missed some games last year through injury, and how integral he is to that Gungahlin United squad in front of the back four. So it will just depend on if they can, one, just keep their main players fit, and two, if those sort of younger players that are coming into the squad or that are just getting in and around first grade football can build off of those more experienced players.
100%. And next, like you said, Monaro, we are on to new coach Frank Casher. It's a new era at Monaro Panthers. 2020, of course, they finished as the Wooden Spooners in 8th place. They finished second in the playoff series, but they won that playoff final against the then named Woden-Weston Wanderers. So, Russ, what are the ins and outs at Monaro, or at least the...
How long have you got?
Wait, them or Tigers? Who's longer?
This is what happened with Tigers last year. How long have you got this year? It's Panthers.
Casher's brought in a lot of players that we know, and a lot of them have had experience of him at Canberra Olympic. I think in that run that we talked about, I think I was talking to Frank before, and he said he's coached all of these players that he's brought in at one stage or other in his career in the past. He's brought in people like Josh Calabria, Kofi Danning, Stephen Dominici, Dom Gianpaolo, both Haptamerians, Tom McLaughlin, Lasse Ulrich. I mean, it's a huge list, all quality players. And it's testament to Frank Casher as a coach and his ability to be able to attract those players to a club that finished 8th last year. But he's managed to keep the core of the players he's wanted to keep there. David Jenkins, Evan Alexander, really the goalkeeper, Lukman, Ahmed Shaibu as well, and Sam Smith. So they've got the best of what they had last year, and he's integrated these new players in. Now the question is, can this group of new players gel and put on enough performances to get enough points to win the title. Now, in a 7-round season last year, you'd question it. You'd say, well, perhaps not. It's going to take 4 or 5 rounds for them to really find their niche. In a 21-round campaign, and Frank won't thank me for saying it, but I think they're probably one of the favourites up there with Canberra, Croatia, based solely on what they've got in terms of the talent in their roster. You can't argue with it, to be honest. It looks really good. But with that comes what we spoke about before, with expectations and the ability that other teams will look at them to be the side that's making the play every time that they play them. They might shut up shop, might find it defensively difficult to break down teams, and they're there to be shot at. But that's what the club wants. That's what Monaro Panthers wants. That's why they hired a coach like Frank to get them there. And that's why he's brought in these players. They haven't come there to sit in there and play in the bottom 4 final series, have they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Russ, I guess just to touch on that, I guess how much does that just speak to Frank Keisha's influence in Canberra football? I mean, we're talking about Monaro Panthers who you know, there's no secret, there's no lie about it. They struggled last season. They finished bottom of the table. I mean, to bring in a coach with the experience and resume of Frank Keisha to then, you know, bring in all these quality players that he's worked with in the past. And there's all these questions about, you know, how long it might take for them to integrate their playing squad throughout a 21-game season. But obviously those players are very familiar with Frank and what he demands and what he wants from his team. But I guess, Russ, does that sort of speak to how good of a coach Frank is, that he can take this team that finished 8th last season, albeit that they've made a lot of changes? But I mean, to talk about going from Wood-Spooners to potentially winning the title, just, I guess, speaks just how great of a coach Frank is and the influence that he will have this season.
Yeah, let's not forget that Panthers side, even though it did finish 8th last year, was probably exceptionally unlucky to finish 8th. We did a couple of their games early in the season. I think they hit the woodwork more than any side that I've ever seen in my life. It was almost there at Riverside Stadium for a while. And they did have a good core of players in that team. There were some really good footballers in that side. They just couldn't buy themselves a goal. Now, Frank's got a basis there where he's gone in and gone, well, here's a group of players I want to keep. There might be 7, 8, 9 of them in that group. And he's added to them the 8 or 9 players that he knows very well and he knows can fit into the style of football that he wants to play. Now, that's crucial. I've seen them a number of times in pre-season. Yes, they're a work in progress. They were a bit patchy in some parts. Some parts they looked good. Some parts they looked a bit rusty. They can't buy a goal from the penalty spot right about now. They've had 3 in pre-seasons and they missed them all. So that's something to work on. But
have they hit the target at least?
Yeah, you look at the team that they've got out there and the players they've got, and I haven't even mentioned people like Seb Woods, who's pushing for a first grade spot there as well, and people like James Driscoll, another youngster there that's going to be trying getting into that first grade outfit. And it's a really, really good squad. It's going to take them a while to gel, but when they do, I think I said to the Monaro committee earlier in the season in one of the preseason friendlies I watched, when they do click, someone's going to cop an absolute flogging from this group.
Yeah, for me with Monaro, with all the players that are coming in, I think you nailed it on the head, Russ. To keep the core there, you're bringing a lot, but you're keeping the core. Like Lukeman was outstanding in his first ever season, I thought, especially near the end. He really started to gain his momentum. And then even near the end of the season, when you said they kept hitting the post, in the last couple of games, they started to not create as many goals. And then that's when they were really relying on Lukeman last season. And if sometimes if the defense would, catch Lukeman out, they sort of struggled. That's how it happened at the end of the season. At the start of the season, though, like you said, against Canberra, Croatia, they could have easily won in those first couple of games, especially. So in saying that, though, I think it's good that they've got some more midfield depth now. Gungahlin, I think, is great because he's a real anchor in that midfield. And I also, an underrated one, which they haven't talked about in a while because he's been playing different positions, is Sam Rosbach. And I think he's going to be playing more of a midfielder now, which I think they could have used at the end of last season when they were struggling to create. I know he was playing fullback. I reckon if they put him in, they might have been able to create a few more chances. Like, for example, in the Tuggeranong match where it was 0-0 near the end of the season, just for an example. So I think that's also going to be a key one. I know he's not a new signing, but he's changing positions from what I've been told.
Yeah, Tom McLaughlin, one of those well-known Canberra stats, 7 straight grand finals he's played in now, which is
impressive,
a phenomenal achievement. And he'll be hoping to make it 8 this year. Ben Silk has been playing
Yep.
next to him in midfield as well, and he's been a revelation in that position that Frank's put him in, just as the second number 6. And you go further forward, and then you perm whichever one's from 5. You got Danning, Dominici, Gianpaolo, Sam Smith, Ahmed Shaibu, 5 strikers there that are all different in the way they play, and he gives them so many options. Fitting them all in, finding the right system is going to be the key. And you mentioned Frank's there as well, and he's got Ian Worthington as his assistant there, and
Very good
Matt Keisha as well. So they've got a good group off the field as well. They've got a good group on the field, and despite losing a few players and a few of the youngsters, obviously, that have seen that they're not going to get a run and have maybe gone to another club. If you can bring that culture together, you've got half a chance. And I think by bringing players in that have played together in the past, they all know each other very well as well. I think he's hit the ground running.
Would you say it speeds up the process?
100%, yeah, I think he would have to. I mean, you look at the group that he's brought in and the names we've mentioned. You look at people like Calabria, Dominici, Jeremy Hudson, McLaughlin. They were all there in that run we were talking about with Canberra Olympic, and they all know each other very, very well. So it definitely helps the process. And I think that's half the battle, is you can get a coach in there that goes, well, I want X player to come with me. That player is comfortable with that coach, but so is everybody else he's played with. So they go, well, I'm going. Are you going to come as well? And it makes a big difference, especially in a town which we've spoken about many times in the past. It's very small. It's very easy to go from one club to another. It's not as if we're talking hours by car here. The longest road trip is about 30 minutes in terms of training up to north if you're not going to Cooma. But yeah, it's going to be a really good season for them. Again, expectations. Yep. What are the expectations? The Monaro board are going to have their expectations as well.
Well, yeah, they had, I believe the last time they won the grand final was 99, if I'm not mistaken. So, and they've been struggling to make the top 4 for at least, for the better part of 10 years. I know they've been in and out. So I think for the board, 100%, it's going to be at the very least Final 4. I know Frank.
If they don't make the 4, I think it'll be a disaster for them, to be honest.
At the very least, Final 4. Grand final, they'll definitely want with the amount they've gone out on and get a whole lot of sponsors to fund this team. But for Frank is going to, which is, I understand, he's going to sort of downplay it and say, we just want to build for the future and then build the process coming in. So it's going to be interesting to say the least. Michael? I was
just going to say, looking at that group and having talked about Canberra Croatia as well, and we'll go on to Tigers and a couple of other teams there, Gungahlin as well, that we spoke about with their quality that they've got. We haven't thrown the FFA Cup into this mix. That trophy obviously puts a lot of pressure on teams, a lot of midweek games. And, you look at those groups and go, could these clubs do us proud as a territory in the FFA Cup? And you look at this squad, you look at Croatia, you look at Tigers, look at Gungahlin, you think, yeah, Belconnen as well. You think, yeah, they wouldn't be out of place, would they?
100%. Michael, any more comments before you move on to Tigers?
Yeah, most definitely. I think in a more general sense, then this just doesn't obviously apply to Monaro Panthers, but I mean, one of the telling sort of stories this season will be how teams are going to be integrating a 21 game NPL season on top of those commitments of cup football too, compared to last season where they were only playing 7 games. So it'll be interesting to see how each team sort of manages their squad to fit what they have during the week and on the weekend as well. So it's going to be a bit of an adjustment period for teams to get back into that. It's not something that they're obviously not unfamiliar with, but they did have that shortened season last year. Granted, it wasn't their fault. So it will be interesting to see how teams go about managing their season and commitments as well with the Cup and the NPL. Moving on, we got Tigers FC. Obviously, the coach there is Ryan Grogan there for his second year at the helm. They finished just in the top 4 last season in 4th place and 3rd in that championship series in 2020. Russ, changes at this club.
Yeah, changes are plenty.
Let's delve into it.
Yeah, changes are plenty, isn't there? I mean, they've brought in some quality from Gungahlin, Anthony Timotheu, Lockie Griffiths and Josh Galevsky, to name 3 quality footballers that they've brought in there. They've also brought in Nick Popovich and Daniel Sparrow from Canberra Olympic as well. Adds to their depth that they've already got. Rocco Stricker back fit as well. Sam Whittier, who's been amongst the goals pre-season, so is Julian Borgner. They've lost a fair few that have gone to Queanbeyan City, to Gabby Wilkes revolution there, if you like. He's got people like Hussein Freshgorn, Josefowski, Mark Shields, Michael Kitter, Alex Ola-Rigby. They've all moved on. They've replaced him with the younger generation, if you like. And is it working? Well, their last 3 results in pre-season: 7-1, 7-0, and 7-3. So you tell me. It sounds like an overlong tennis match, doesn't it?
Just goals, goals, goals.
Masses.
It's a toss-up between the highest investors in players this season, between Tigers and Monaro. I know that we mentioned previously on the show about how last season it was Gungahlin with all the additions and how they were going to be able to handle that, and now it's Tigers and Monaro. I think a great addition for them is in the assistant coaching area, where they've got Antony Tuggeranong. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Close enough. Hope he doesn't get mad at me for that. So it gives Grogan a very good second opinion. It's a great move by Tigers, given Antony's resume in Canberra football, and in particular his amazing success with Belconnen United in NPLW. I mean, I don't really have to get into it too much there to really say how fantastic he was for women's football in Canberra, and what he did with that Belconnen United team. It was absolutely amazing. And I think to have him come over to NPL football and be Grogan's second man will prove to be a great addition to this team as they look to contend for a title, even though they've had those players, as you mentioned, move on to Queanbeyan City, where they've gone and linked up with Gabby Wilk over there. But they've brought in some great players that you mentioned from Gungahlin United in Timotheo, Gulevsky and Griffith. So I think the ceiling is still high for this team looking to contend for a title. So we'll see what happens, but I'm expecting very high hopes of this Tigers outfit. Matt, any thoughts and feelings for Tigers? I mean, I mentioned that Grogan's got a new right hand man now in Antony. Is there any other areas in which you see real progression or strengths that they can use heading into the 2021 campaign?
Not to palm it off, but Russ, I think, was about to say something.
Yeah, well,
I'll let you go first.
I think you made the point, because Ryan Grogan has looked at that squad last year, and he's probably looked at his outfit and gone, well, we finished in the top 4. Where were we struggling? Defensively, maybe we need another centre back, so goes and gets Lachlan Griffiths. We didn't create enough chances, so goes and gets Anthony Timotheo and Joshua Gulevsky. We didn't score enough goals, so goes and gets Nick Popovich, and Gulevsky will weigh in with goals as well. So he's obviously looked at that squad, as most of the coaches would that aren't starting from scratch, and gone, where can I improve on this outfit to make us better than last year? They weren't that far away from the grand final last year, remember? But it was their lack of goals that cost them in the end. And I think they've made the difference this year. And keep an eye out for Jay Kelly as well, because he was great at Canberra Olympic last year. And I think he's a very underrated signing for Tigers, and probably make a big difference to them.
100%.
Excuse me.
And you mentioned a good point there in terms of looking at the squad and saying, what do we need to change? How do we improve? Because it's fair to say, it might be a bit harsh, but it's fair to say that in terms of them making the finals, they only made it because Tuggeranong ended up conceding in the last 5 minutes, and Tuggeranong were on their way to doing that before then. So Tigers sort of, so you got to sort of look at it and say, all right, we're not taking this for granted. We didn't, there's always more room for improvement, and they went in there and they completely improved it. And like you said, like Michael said before, I guess with Gabby moving on to Queanbeyan City and him taking a lot of sort of the older, so sort of the players that have been there for a while. So we've been saying this, we said this for a couple of the other clubs, but and actually sort of reminisces just what we're saying about Olympic, really, in saying that even though it's Ryan Grogan's second year at the club, this is the year that feels like the new era at Tigers.
Yeah, there'll be a big miss in Tony Spaseski. He's joined St George up in Sydney, and I thought he was very good last year. He brings that dynamism and energy to the team. But as you said, they weren't that far away, but they did get a sneak into the finals. But that's just because I think the shortened season, it was just one of those things. It's not to say they weren't without the quality there last year. Sam Witches was scoring goals. He's actually got a fair few in pre-season. He's got 5 in the last 2 as well. So he's in a bit of form. And they've got a young boy called Lachlan Harrington in there that netted 5 in a pre-season friendly as well. So he's definitely improved the squad, and he's got a bigger squad than before, and a younger looking squad as well. And I think he did his work early. and he did it, a lot of it before Christmas, and got the players in and signed up when the end of the season was done so that they could plan for this year. And they've got a great first round tie, which we'll talk about in a bit. But if they hit the ground running, they're going to be very difficult to catch up as well. As with most Tigers teams of the past, they'll score lots of goals. I think they'll score lots of goals. Under Gabby, they always scored lots of goals. Question is whether they can keep them at the other end. And if they can do that, they're very much title challengers for me.
100%. Anything else, Michael, before we move on to Tuggeranong?
Well, absolutely. I think obviously, you mentioned how they're such a force going forward, and the different personnel that they have, they can find the back of the net. You almost look at it as if they will just look to simply outscore their opponents by winning, 4-2, 4-3, 5-4, 5-3, whatever the case may be. But it really will be about, yes, maintaining that strength and power that they have going forward, and the goals that they score. But I think, like you said, it will be telling that they want to stop those goals going in at the other end. And obviously Tony Spaseski is a massive loss for them. He's a fantastic centre half. So St. George picked up a good one there. And, we know the talent that they have up front. It'll be, just about keeping them from going in at the other end.
You mentioned the high scoring games from a completely neutral point of view. We hope they continue. I wouldn't mind a few 5-4s.
It's good for the football fans here in Canberra. We're not complaining about the goals. So
not for the coach's blood pressure, though.
No, definitely not.
Not at all. Not at all. So let's move on to Tuggeranong United. Coach Mitch Stevens, of course, they finished 5th place last year. Like I just mentioned, then they ended up missing out in the last 5 minutes for the finals, and they finished last in the 5th place playoff. Now, look, we can all expect Tuggeranong to be a fighting team. They're always in there without really a shadow of a doubt. They're always in that competition. Even when they started slow at the start of last year, they ended very well. For Mitch, I think what is key, and he said this to me when I had a chat to him as well, is keeping that core group together. They've mostly kept the core group together, like Russ will touch on very shortly. And I guess another thing for Tuggeranong is, is their coach, Mitch Stevens. We've said it before. He knows how to get the best. He's probably one of the best in terms of getting the best out of his crop of talent. When it's not going so well, he knows how to turn it around. He's shown it on a number of occasions. And the fact that no one's really talking about Tuggeranong as well, sort of like for Belconnen, I think it will help them. They just sort of fly under the radar, do what they can. And over 21 rounds, Mitch said he wants to push for top 4, as I'm sure all the clubs want to this season. So, Russ, who are the ins and outs at Tuggeranong?
Yeah, well, they've brought in, they've kept pretty much the same squad as last year, to be perfectly honest, but they've brought in 3 key players. Connor Nolan, back from overseas, will add some steel to that midfield, and he can play in that number 6 role, which will allow Cam Doherty perhaps to go back to his more preferred position of left back, which will probably help the balance of the side. They've also brought in a young centre-back, Tarazi Mbogo from Brindabella Blues. He's a towering presence for 16 years old. He's huge. And in pre-season, he looked really good. And they partnered him with Harrison Bunell, and it's a centre-back partnership that they've had since they played in the under-16s together before Tarazi went across to Brindabella for a season. And those two boys, belie their age, you should see the size of them. Harrison Bunell was a bit of a waif last year, and I don't know what his parents have been feeding him, but he's come back bulked up, and he looks a massive presence. And so defensively, they're going to be super solid, difficult to break down. Now, the problem they had last year was creating and scoring goals. Now, to rectify that, he's gone back to Shane Murray, who they had a couple of seasons ago, who's an absolute dead ball expert, created 3 goals from corners in a pre-season friendly. And they've got a couple of young boys up front in Harrison and Harry Truman, who burst onto the scene last year, and another young lad that they brought in who's on the fringe of the first team, a guy called Geno Cerruti, who looked pretty good in pre-season, looks like to be your quintessential false 9, likes to drop into the holes and play the ball, but good presence about him as well, and he can score goals too. So the question is whether they'll get enough to be in the top 4. They might well do. I think they will defend well, they will battle hard, as we know, and they'll rely on set pieces. And if they can do that and use the talents of people like Andrew Slavic, Mark Guy, Danny Fulton, they could surprise 1 or 2. And for Tuggeranong, last year, as you said, 5th, missed out on the finals by a goal in the last 30 seconds. They'll be targeting this year and go, well, if we don't make the top 4, from our point of view, that's disappointing. And I think Mitch Stevens will look at that and go, I will be disappointed if we don't get into the top 4. And that's got to be a good thing for the competition.
100%. Michael, any more on Tuggeranong before we move on to West Canberra?
Yeah, I think they obviously haven't made the finals since, back in 2018 when they had that exceptional campaign where they ended their 14 year run with their absence from the finals. And you guys touched on it there where they were agonizingly close to getting in the top 4 last season, bar giving up that goal in the dying embers against Canberra, Croatia. It's good that Mitch has been able to keep a hold of the same squad, relatively the same squad, and maintain that core, which is always important to a successful team. Mixing it with the youngsters, like you mentioned at the back, you get the sense that Mitch is a great. He's a good coach. He's a very good coach. He's a very approachable guy. You can tell that his players love playing for him. They're always wearing their hearts on their sleeve, and they'll grit and they'll grind. So, I'm expecting big things from Tuggeranong this season. They'll prove to give a couple of those other teams that we're talking about that are expected to finish in the top 4 a bit of trouble. That's for sure.
100%. On to West Canberra Wanderers, Michael.
West Canberra Wanderers. I've got to get used to saying that. There's all these name changes.
You didn't know who I was talking about, did you, when I said that? That's why you paused for a bit.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got Ulysses De Silva at the helm again, following his first season last year, where they finished 7th. But they managed to turn around in that playoff series where they finished first. And obviously to just go into that a little bit more, they lost that. They finished runners up to Monaro in that playoff final. I think De Silva's side, to say the least, they've been a team that's been affected by departures with the likes of both Barisic's and Jay Selden leaving to Sydney and Melbourne respectively. They went through a real bit of a weird phase last season in terms of they had a squad at the start of the season, then they had players come in throughout this shortened season, and then they tried to integrate those players. So there was just a lot of chopping and changing. But like we said, and just for most teams anyway, the 7-game shortened season last year could have just been looked at and more so as, let's tinker with our squads. Let's see what different formations we can play, what partnerships we can establish, because next season we'll have a we'll have a longer season, and it'll give us a chance to really see what partnerships will work well going forward into the 2021 season. And I think Ulysses has had a bit of time now to work out the personnel of his team and what's going to work well. And they did have some good results towards the tail end of last season. As I mentioned, they finished runners up in the playoff final. So they really managed to turn it around after a very difficult start to the season where, they didn't score a goal for the first few games, didn't they, Russ?
Yeah, they couldn't buy a goal for the first 3 or 4 rounds, could they? But as you said, they picked up towards the end of the season and played some good football. As with most times with West Canberra Wanderers, you look at them every year when they were Woden-Weston and before that Woden Valley, etc., etc. And they're not one of the most fashionable clubs in Canberra. They won't mind us saying that, which means every year they've got to pull something out the hat. And they seem to pull these rabbits out the hat with these young boys that they promote up through their talented pathways. And it's very similar to their women's team. They have this progression through their youth system where they've got this train of boys that they just bring through. And we'll see it again this year. We'll see a lot of new names and new faces in that squad, ones that perhaps we're not too familiar with, and ones that will go, well, how are they going to find life at the top table, so to speak? And very similar with Canberra Olympic in that respect. And pre-season, Uli's given a lot of players a lot of opportunities to shine. The last few results haven't been great for them, but it's pre-season results and they won't really care. It's whether or not these guys can really gel. They brought in a couple of South Americans as well that look pretty good. Marco Pena from Chile is here as well. And there was a couple of Brazilians in the game I saw against South Coast Flames too. So, whether or not they can gel, we'll wait and see. And I think it's going to be an interesting season for Yuli and his boys. We haven't talked about relegation for any of these club sides at the moment, and all 8 of them will be looking over their shoulders at one stage this season and going, well, it could be us that go. But alternatively, all 8 of them will be eyeing that top 4 and going, we can make it. And West Canberra Wanderers won't be thinking any different.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. And I think, Matt, just to sort of go off that, I mean, can you speak a little bit about, we are talking about, relegation this season, but we'll relegation promotion between NPL 1, NPL 2. And, we've touched on it there about, teams having to look over their shoulders. And as the season goes on and that pressure increases to stay in the league, I guess, can you just talk a little bit about a team like West Canberra Wanderers who, might be looking over their shoulder, as for other teams, to say the least, about, how that is going to play into the mindset of a team like West Canberra Wanderers, when you do take into consideration that last season was a filling out process. There was no relegation. It was a shortened season, but that is completely changed for 2021, where the normality has returned and you've got the excitement, of promotion and relegation. I guess, can you just speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, so when I talked to Ulysses, he wasn't, he didn't shy away from the fact that, they lost a lot, they lost a lot of players, especially a lot of their key quality that brought them back to not end up, to turn around their season last year. He didn't shy away from it. Ulysses is probably one of the most honest, coaches out there. He'll tell you like it is if you ever chat to him. So they're expecting it, but I think they're going to be looking at it as because on paper, a lot of people have been saying on paper they're probably one of the favorites to go down, and I'm sure it's harsh to say, but
someone's got to go.
That's it. That's the thing. So I think they'll be using that. They should probably be using that as a swap over, sort of like as a fuel for the players. Ulysses or I think they've got Oida in as an assistant coach, if I'm not mistaken, as well, who coached Queen City last year. So that's another good second opinion to have also. I think they're going to be using it as, look, a lot of people are talking about us and they're saying that we're going to go down. We don't have the best squad on paper, and we have a very young squad and no one's expecting a lot from us. So let's use that as fuel to the fire. Let's use it to, prove everybody wrong. I'm sure that's the mindset they're going to have, and that's the mindset they should have, because once you accept. And it's sort of like when you watch the EPL or you watch any other top league, even if you're not the favorites or if you're in bottom place for a while, if you accept that you're going down, there's only going to be one outcome. You're going down, but if you don't accept it, then maybe you can turn it around. So
yeah, I mean, I came over to Australia the second time in mid 2005 to play for Tuggeranong United, and we ended up getting relegated that year. One of the last times they had relegation from the Premier League, and it wasn't a nice experience. The pressure on those last few games to try and get a result was phenomenal. And the last game of the season, we played Capital City Suns, and we needed a win to stay up. And things didn't go our way, and we drew 1 apiece, and we just could not get that goal. And the feeling afterwards, when we were down, was terrible. I mean, it was akin. I mean, I don't want to make it sound too dramatic, but it was like someone had died. It was that bad for everybody involved in the club, and a group of players this season are going to feel that. I'm sure everybody in their life has had some really bad footballing experiences where you've either got relegated, you've lost the cup final, you've missed out on whatever it might be on selection, and that feeling, that gutting feeling you get when you get relegated, stays with you for the whole year, because you don't have any time you can't do anything about it till you get back on the park next year in NPL 2 and try and rectify the situation. Now, like I say, that's going to add added pressure to every single match this season. And we're lucky from a neutral point of view. We can sit here and we can enjoy, in inverted commas, the relegation battle as much as we're going to enjoy the fight for the top 4, as will most football fans in Canberra. But for those involved and those coaches and those players, there's going to be some antsy matches, and there's going to be some really, really difficult times ahead. And is it too harsh to say I'm looking forward to it?
Possibly.
But that's football. You know what I
Michael,
mean. That's football, no doubt.
any last words before we move on to the round 1 draw?
Well, I mean, just I think more so around the, as Russ just mentioned there, the heartache, the disappointment of going down a division, a competition. It's an experience that we haven't been exposed to in Canberra for a while, and now that we've got back the promotion relegation, we're going to have, the spectrum where a team is going to be over the moon by getting promoted from NPL 2 to NPL 1 come season's end, and then you're going to have another team on the complete opposite end of that scale where the mood is going to be completely down, and they've realized that they've been relegated. It's a gut-wrenching feeling, as you mentioned, Russ, and that's going to give an incentive to every single one of those teams playing in NPL 1 this season, particularly those teams that are predicted to, be in that bottom half of the table. Every point, every game, every goal is going to matter this season, because it's not like how it was in previous years where you're going to you finish last and nothing's going to happen because you're going to play in the same competition, the following season. So that safety net is now gone. There is that incentive to want to manage a season, to play well, to win games, so you're not that team that gets relegated come the end of the season.
And every single game is important. We're going to get to games at the end of the season where we're going to have teams that are at the top playing teams that are at the bottom. And in the past, that might be a walkover because the teams at the bottom might be like, well, it doesn't matter to us. But now every single point, as you say, is going to be crucial. And those games could turn into absolute battles. And it should be a really good spectacle for everybody.
It definitely should, 100%. And let's move on to the round 1 draw, shall we? We start with West Canberra Wanderers versus Gungahlin, 12:45 p.m. on Saturday, 10th of April at Melrose Synthetic. Now, Russ, before we get into this one, I have to ask you, maybe you might know, an interesting timing here for Melrose. Is that just like a scheduling issue they have with the ground?
Yes, it's really interesting. All their home game, their first grade games seem to be at 12:45 at home this year. I haven't really looked into it ourselves, but they seem to, I think they're playing their first their NPL 1's matches before their under 23s, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know. It's a strange one, but they seem to be wanting to go that. Whether that's because they feel that Dooley feels he needs to keep his squad fresh for matches like that, I'm not sure, but we'll see. It's very interesting, and it's going to be a different build up to those teams that have to play at 12:45, as you know yourself. If you boys have played in the past as well, I say you fuel ahead of the game a bit differently, but you're going to be eating your pre-match when you're normally having your breakfast, which is a bit different, and it's going to take some getting used to those players. Maybe they've done it to push some teams out of their comfort zone.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was a little bit of strategical mental warfare going on there for sure. But yeah, the early kickoff is definitely a surprise. That's for sure. Matt, do you want to keep breaking down?
We could go to both games, can't you? You can go to the 12:45 and then rock over to the 5:30 game.
Yeah,
with that.
It's without a doubt. I think Gungahlin will be going into this one with something to prove after their after the grand final, and they're always going to play it down. But we all know Marcel is a coach, and obviously every coach hates losing, but Gungahlin especially, considering how successful they've been recently, after losing that final, they're going to be out with something to prove, I think. So watch out for Gungahlin. They're going to be on top of their game. In terms of West Canberra Wanderers, like a few of the other clubs, we don't know really what to expect. Very young squad, we know that for sure. So, don't count out West Canberra Wanderers, I think. Russ, any final thoughts before we move on?
Round 1, you don't want to lose. Simple fact of the matter is you're not going to win anything or lose anything if you don't win in round 1. But you want to get off to a good start. Every side wants to build a bit of momentum. And you go out there and you get 3 points on the board, and the next day you look at the table and there's some teams below you with 0, gives you that lift. And I think it's important to start. It's going to be a good game. Gungahlin aren't going to fancy the synthetic. Nobody really likes playing Melrose. It might be a trump card for West Canberra this year.
Most definitely. And I'm just thinking, lads, why not throw a prediction in there? who are we taking in this contest? We'll do it for all the games.
Look, I never make a prediction.
I was about to say, is this
still on the fence?
It's probably better that Russ doesn't give a prediction then, because he's on the doing the commentary and all that. So I was testing you.
You were? All right. So that was just a joke, right? We're doing predictions.
You guys.
You could no, Matt.
Michael, you lead the way.
If I give a prediction, you have to, Michael, as well.
Oh no, most definitely.
Okay,
100%.
All right. I'm not going to predict scores because that's just.
I'm going for
no. That's too technical. Yeah, I just want winner or draw.
Okay. All right. I'm saying Gungahlin win.
As am I.
And if I was going to make a prediction, I would say Gungahlin.
All right. I'll edit that one out for you.
All right. You can leave it in.
Cut that one out.
All right. Michael, introduce the next game for us, please.
An absolute cracker, I think this one's going to be to open up a 2021 campaign. Monaro Panthers at home to Canberra Olympic, 5:30 p.m. Saturday, April 10th at Riverside Stadium there in Queanbeyan. Olympic go to Queanbeyan obviously to face their old coach Frank Casher in his first league game in charge of Monaro. I think there's a lot of storylines there. Obviously, it should be an absolutely fantastic game. You've got Frank, who's the new coach of Panthers. You've got, Catnach at Olympic there. It should be an absolutely exciting contest there Saturday evening. Matt, any thoughts on this contest?
It's definitely going to be interesting to say the least. And let's not forget, you mentioned there, of course, Frank obviously used to coach Robbie as well, so that's another little element that we can throw into this. Of course, it's a night game under the lights at Riverside, across from Russ, always points out the Macca sign there. So it's a magical part of Riverside, to say the least. I think it's going to be massive just for Monaro in general, because they have the sponsors room up there at Riverside, and it's probably going to be this one will probably be their biggest turnout. All the sponsors will be invited. Everyone will be there. You'll have a pretty big crowd probably underneath as well. Like we talked about the expectations, the board really, really, really want to go back to winning ways. So there's no better way to start the season than doing it that way. So add all the elements together. I think it's going to be an absolute cracking match. It might start a bit, cagey, I think, to start the first half. That's my sort of prediction in that first half. I think it'll be cagey. And I think whoever wins it, or if it's a draw or whatnot, I think it'll happen late, in my opinion, in this one. That's just my gut feeling in this one. What do you think, Russ?
Well, you'll be able to find out this. Unsurprisingly, you'll understand is the first live Bar TV match of the rounds. I'll be at the Riverside Stadium for this one, probably with Mitch Stevens, the Tuggeranong head coach, for what I'm dubbing the Master versus the Apprentice. Frank Casher against Robbie Catnach. It's going to be a very interesting matchup between two teams that are going to have a raft of new players wearing their club shirts for the new season. They all know each other. They've all played against each other. There'll be some Canberra Olympic boys that have been watching these Monaro Panthers players, possibly as fans of Canberra Olympic back in that FFA Cup run, now on the field against them, putting their wares up against the big names that Monaro Panthers have brought in. I'm really looking forward to it. It should be an exciting way to kick off the season live on Bar TV.
Absolutely. And I think my prediction for this game, I think given the circumstances, the first sort of game at home for Monaro under the lights at Riverside Stadium, it's all tailored to, be a successful night for those in Monaro colours. So I'm going for a Panthers win at home. Nicoletti, prediction.
Yeah, I'm going for a Panthers win. It'll be late though. It'll probably look like it'll be a draw for a bit, and then they'll hit. I'm going to say Monaro, but if Olympic wins, I say it'll be the exact same way. It'll be late, in my opinion.
Okay,
Russ.
Yeah, I think Olympic will push them. And they'll be hard to beat, but I think Panthers will have just too much quality in that lineup on the evening.
All right. So next up, we have Tuggeranong United versus Belconnen over at Canberra, 2:01, 3 p.m. Sunday, April 11th. This is going to be a very close encounter, in my opinion. I don't think there's a lot separating these sides. I'll give my prediction early. I think this one's going to be a draw.
I was going to go.
You read my mind. You read my mind. It's exactly what I was just thinking.
There we go. This will be Fab Michelli's first first grade league match in charge. So he will be looking he'll be looking even more probably excited than any of the coaches, I would say, in terms of the first matchup. We talked about Mitch and what we expect from Tuggeranong. I think this will be a very close one. There won't be a lot of goals in this one, in my opinion. I think it's going to be a very close, doggedy match. Everyone's going to push each other to the limit. And yeah, I'm going to say this one's going to be a draw. What do you think, Russ?
Yeah, I think you've pretty much read the script that I would have written as well, to be perfectly honest. I think there's two rock-solid defences, two very good goalkeepers, two sides that are looking to find their rhythm in terms of what they're going to do as an attacking force. I think probably Belconnen will have slightly more firepower than Tuggeranong, but Tuggeranong at Canberra is always a tricky game for everybody anyway. And I think if Fab came away with a point from that, I don't think either team would be too dissatisfied with that as a start to the season.
Absolutely. I think, we've all got the same thoughts and feelings on this contest, and it being, close and cagey, and it ending in a draw, should I say. You've got two solid outfits. I expect it to be, very close, very end to end. Like you said, Russ, you'd probably give Belconnen the slight edge in terms of maybe the overall quality that they have and the influence, like we mentioned earlier, of Lucas Flores, who can just unlock a defense at any moment to find the back of the net. So it will just highly depend on, if Belconnen can maybe, find that goal or two to take a valuable 3 points away from home and take that back to Belconnen. But I expect it to be very cagey. It's going to be a close contest. I don't think there'll be a lot of goals in it, like you mentioned as well. And I still think it'll be a great game of football, though, most definitely, with Tuggeranong at home playing at host to Belconnen. So you can expect that game to be good. That's for sure.
100%. Michael, what is the last matchup for the round?
A great game, in fact, Matt. A fantastic game. We've got Tigers FC against Canberra, Croatia, 3 p.m. Sunday, April 11th at Nigel Oval. You've got Tigers playing against the defending champions. Guys, we remember last year's fixture between these two teams out in Nijong. My God, there was some absolutely cracking goals in this game. They would have just surfaced on the internet around the world if it could. That's how good the goals were in this game last year. I remember watching the highlights back, and as excited as Russ was on the commentary about the goals, I mean, I was sitting there going, my goodness, there were actually some fantastic goals that brought a smile to my face just because of it happening in our league and it being broadcasted like that. So I mean, it was a fantastic game of football to watch. I'm sure you can attest to that, Russ. Not only just how good that game was last year, but how good this game will be when both teams line up for round one.
Absolutely. There's never a dull moment when these two meet. There's usually bags and bags of goals. I remember a game we did down there many years ago where it was 8-5 to Canberra, Croatia, when they were 5-2 down at the break. It was insane. And hopefully more of it this time. We'll be there with the live bar TV cameras on Sunday at Nigel Oval, myself and this young man sat next to me, Matt Nicoletti, making his debut on Code Comms in the NPL. It should be a really good game. We're expecting lots and lots of goals, if I'm being honest. I mean, even though both sides have got really good defences, I think it says more for the talent of the attack. Not saying that they're bad at the back. It's just that there's so much quality on the field. I can't see there being no goals in the game. And I think both coaches will set their teams out to try and attack the opposition and lay a marker for the season. And when you look at all the fixtures in round one and you look at the games that we've got coming up, and they've all got their own little niche to them, you think which one's going to provide the fireworks, which one's going to provide the worldies, which one's going to provide really good entertainment. And if you had to pick one of the four, I'm sure most people will go, well, let's watch Tigers and Croatia and see what they can put up for us.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I said it last year, that Whittier goal, that was my goal of the season last year from this exact fixture at Nijong. I'm looking forward to it. First road trip for the commentary as well. It's going to be a good time, I think. And so for me, I like Russ said, I think it'll be very high scoring.
We hope it is.
Yeah, well, we hope anyway.
Yeah.
It's a long way back.
Hope we didn't just jinx. Hopefully we just didn't just jinx it. So
yeah, it's a long drive when it's been 0-0. So.
So it's going to be I'm looking forward to it. So the interesting thing is if they're both going to probably be looking at this one, maybe less so, like everyone, obviously you want to get onto the top, you want to get on with a win. But I think this one might be a little bit even though they both want to win, I think both would be happy with the draw only because they both know they're two of the stronger sides in the competition this year. And I think both will get off to a cracking start. Canberra, Croatia and Tigers. Tigers more so than last year. I think they're going to get off to a more of a cracking start than they did last year in general. So I think they'll both be happy with the draw. And I'm going to go with a draw. Probably a high scoring one, I'd say, because it's the start of the season.
4-4.
Yeah. Well, all right, let's just throw it out there. I think it'll be a high scoring draw or a 0-0.
Yeah.
Not going to be it won't be, I don't think it'll be like a 1-1 or a 1-1. I think it'll be either a 0-0 or a high scoring draw. That's me.
Yeah, I think I'm very much along the same lines. Just going over this fixture now. Obviously, both teams have great attacking talent. We've talked about the history of this fixture and what it brings, and goals are certainly it. So I'm expecting a draw too, Nicoletti. I'm going for a 2-2 draw, to be particular. That's just the scoreline that popped up in my mind when I thought about the quality that both teams have. It being the first game of the season, it'll be a good game, most definitely. But I think the spoils will be shared in this one. What about you, Russ?
Well, this is a difficult one for me to call because I look at it for both sides, and I look at Tigers going to have the want and the need to go out there and win the game. Canberra, Croatia haven't lost a game in a long time. Bearing in mind, 10 days before this, it's the FFA Cup third round games. Canberra, Croatia play Queanbeyan City. Gungahlin play Tigers. There's a possibility that someone's cup run's coming to an end early, and how you recover from that as well when you've put a lot of we all know how important the FFA Cup is to everybody in this town. Then, of course, if both sides have won, they've got to start thinking about planning for a next round of that FFA Cup as well. And that's going to come in and around that week after that. So that's going to play into most people's preparations as well. But looking at the game, I'm going to say if I had to pick a winner, I think that Canberra, Croatia, considering they've not lost for so long and considering the stability that they'll have in their group compared to Tigers, who are still probably under Ryan finding that best mix of their new players, Canberra, Croatia might nick it by the odd goal in 5 or 6, if you can say.
All right. Awesome. All right. I think that wraps us up today, guys. Thank you very much for joining us. It was great to be back. Good energy with the start of the season coming up. Michael, any last words before we sign off?
I'm so excited to, have a full season to cover. It won't be, such a shortened season where we went through, a great first episode, and then, the COVID hit, and then we had to, sit back and watch and let the situation develop. I think we still did really well considering all the implications that we had to deal with last season. But I'm just very much looking forward to a full 21 game season covering NPL 1, NPL 2, and WNPL, which we'll cover shortly in future previews before their seasons start. It's great to see Canberra football back to basically normality, to have the full season, to have people be able to go and watch their favorite teams play. They won't have to just stay at home and watch it on Bar TV Sports or online streaming. We'll all have the opportunity now to go to games and watch games that we want to watch and players that we want to see. So to have that exposure back in our game in a longer normal season is great for Canberra football. So I'm most certainly excited for what's ahead.
Indeed, we are. Russ, thank you very much for joining us again. Any last words before we sign off?
Yeah, of course. Don't forget you can watch all the action on Bar TV, live exclusive on Bar TV, the home of grassroots sport in Australia. We kick off 27th of March with the doubleheader in the Charity Shield, Canberra, Croatia versus Wagga City Wanderers at 4:00. And then, of course, Canberra, Croatia v Belconnen in the women's game at 6:30. Then on Sunday, We're scheduled to be at an FFA Cup tie, Canberra Olympic versus Tuggeranong United. And then on the Wednesday, Canberra Croatia versus Queanbeyan City. And then, of course, we've got another tie from that round and then a couple of quarterfinals. And if I can just thank our sponsors again for the FFA Cup, official broadcast sponsors of the preliminary rounds, Monaro Built Homes, Sepeda Collective, where we are right now, Canberra Olympic FC, Canberra Deakin Football Club, Exhibit Printers, Crowther's Property, and the Odd Job Lads, who are the ones I forgot before. Rory Larkin, apologise there, mate. But all 7 of those groups. And I spoke to Frank in commentary for the Gungahlin match on the weekend when they beat Juventus 6-0 in the third round of the competition. Each one of those 7 sponsors that I mentioned there are all very big football fans in Canberra. They've done it because they believe in grassroots football in Canberra. They've done it because they want to see grassroots football stream live and to give a platform for the players and the coaches and the staff and the people that work so hard with these clubs to be shown around Australia. So we thank them very much for their support, and we hope that they get something out of this as much as we do as well. And of course, round 1, we've talked about those games, and you'll be able to watch all of the FFA Cup action, all of the NPL action and the WNPL action, perhaps even some selected NPL2 stuff as well heading into the season. Masses of matches coming up. And if you want to get involved in commentary or anything like that, feel free to drop us a line on Facebook and we can probably hit you up to a couple of games as well.
Indeed. Thanks to you guys' sentiment of what I was about to say then. Really looking forward to the season to start. Thanks for bearing with us. Long episode today, but I felt like it was necessary to give every team a quality preview and a quality voice. That's why I posted all my chats with all the coaches, just so everyone gets a word of their club out there.
There's
as well.
No such thing as too much football, Matt.
As Russ definitely will know this year when he does all the commentary, as well as helping us out when he can.
I'll be very scratchy halfway through the year, I can guarantee it.
Yeah, you might lose your voice, Russ.
I guarantee my wife hopes I do.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Future episodes, we'll have 2 more podcasts before the season starts. So this is, of course, our NPL 1. Then we'll have NPLW next, the preview. Jeremy McGann will hopefully be joining us for that one. And then we'll also have the NPL 2 preview the following week after that. Looking forward to all the football. It's going to be fantastic. I'm just glad for this season to start. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you next week.